Welcome to X-Men Evolution, episode 42 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast. Rod, I realize I have to go through and change a bunch of names because I say animated series in the titles for a bunch of them that are Evolution. So that's a thing I'll be doing this weekend.
Oh, that's fun. and I'm Rod, and I didn't think of something clever to say after this intro.
Well, Cyclops, we have to record one more this this night, so yeah.
I used up my wild card for this one.
Oh shit! I just realized now this means because we're on video, if we do sessions, we're gonna have like the same shirts on everything. And that's gonna wreck my brain.
Yeah, I decided to go themed today.
I mean, same. Shout out to Brian Cage from AEW. This was one of his shirts on the Indies when he was doing the Swolverine as part of the nickname for him. Who Berserker Barrage and what was it? Was it Weapon X? He had something else that was a Wolverine reference in his repertoire. So
that's fun. That's a real badass design, and I love the colors too.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly podcast series where we're going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode we can find. This podcast started with the original 1992 X-Men the animated series, building up to the release of X-Men 97. We done finished that. Along the way, we've also launched our companion series, the Xavier Files, with interviews of members of the X-Men community, including voice actors from the series.
And we have one on the books, hopefully two, but at least one that's incoming in a few weeks.
I also thought about how funny it is that that'll be the first guest that's visually on, considering what their character is.
Yeah, it is. There's an irony to that.
Yeah.
Guess in the comments if you think you know who it is.
There you go. Since season 2 of X-Men 97 is light years away, we're going back.
We might not be alive for it.
Yeah, that's just general. We have an election between now and then. So
nukes falling from the sky.
We're back for the second half of our first watch through of X-Men Evolution, and I mentioned this in the last episode, but my brain is so happy that we'll be finishing this season before the new year, or the series before the new year, so that there's not some like weird like third to last episode of the fourth season or something.
What, you don't want to record on Christmas Eve? Come on. Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that came out over 20 years ago. There are going to be spoilers. If you don't want to spoil it for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. And we are not... leave it in. It's fine. We're not currently sponsored or affiliated with Marvel Animation, Disney, or Disney Plus in any way.
And don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, which I just remembered like a couple like days ago and uploaded about 3 weeks of content at once. Threads, X, and Facebook.
You can tell how much I'm on TikTok if I didn't even text you, because I'll normally text you if there's something missing that should go somewhere, but I just never go on TikTok.
Yeah, I'm usually pretty aloof and flighty, but this last couple weeks specifically, because I've mentioned this in other episodes, I have my music podcast going now, and it's taking way more brain bandwidth than I even anticipated. But yeah, so all those clips are there now. If you were one of the few people that were like keeping track of it, and you're like, there hasn't been like a clip for a while. Yes, you're correct. They're all there now though. And of course, make sure to follow us on all your favorite podcast services. Number 1 on CastBox. I want that to become a thing. Now on to the show. Today we are talking about Season 3, Episode 12, which should have been the season finale, but it's not, and we'll get back into that next week, titled Dark Horizon Part 2. It aired on August 16th of 2003. Currently sits at an 8.2 star rating on IMDb. I think this might have been my favorite episode of Evolution so far.
Yeah?
It felt like a superhero show, finally.
I can see that. I don't know if it was my favorite, but I thought it had a lot of really great moments in it. So,
I just liked how there was not just action, but like it seemed it was choreographed and power sets were thought out and stuff, and it was very minimal. I don't think there was any of the school drama this time around because they're completely out of the school now.
Yeah, there was no school drama at all. No mention of the fact that this is technically like, within not sleeping of their graduation day kind of scenario for Jean and Scott.
That's true. Yeah, they went straight from their So if we go by cartoon or X-Men universe's logic, So is them graduating going to be Evolution's version of Jean and Scott getting married from the animated series? Like they can never graduate because it keeps getting ruined?
I think you don't actually need to like get handed your diploma for a graduation to count in the US, so I think it's okay.
But same with marriage. That's what we said about the
Oh yeah. Well, it all depends. If it was Morph legally allowed to sign their marriage certificates.
Yeah.
Yep.
So wait, because before what it was like they couldn't have the ceremony, so they didn't really get married
because they didn't have a priest say you are now a man and wife. Yeah.
Yeah. So this time around, is it like, did they graduate?
Yes, they did. Yeah. It'll show up in the mail like a month and a half from now.
So technically, it's kind of funny when I graduated college.
Mm-hmm.
So just to paint the picture a little bit for everybody, like I'm, come from an immigrant family. I was the first one in my family to graduate high school, first one to graduate college. So it was a big deal for my parents. They came out for my graduation, and I walked. I did the whole thing. I received, you receive the fake diploma on stage, right? Mm-hmm. Like a little paper, and then afterwards, some office gives you, your actual the framed diploma. So we do the whole thing. My parents are super proud, everything. We go to take pictures. Even I know that I need to like suck it up and just do these pictures because it's a big deal generationally and stuff.
Of course.
We open the box, and instead of a diploma, there's a paper saying I owe like $10 for a parking ticket on campus. The best part was, since it was on like a Saturday or Sunday, it wasn't open until Monday or Tuesday. And when I went to go resolve it, I didn't have a parking ticket. That was just a clerical error. And so
I thought you were going to say like your mom wrecked shop when that happened.
I don't remember what happened. So that's either good and that everyone was calm, or bad and that has been blocked from my memory. Whatever she did, because my family was out of town by the time I actually got my diploma. So I don't think there's actually any pictures. I have to go back and check, but I don't think there's any pictures of that. So like,
it's just you with a box.
So technically, I did the opposite of what happened here with Gene and Scott. I did the whole ceremony, but technically did not graduate until like 3 days later. So fun
because of a clerical error.
Yeah. Anyway, this does do a previously on, but it makes sense this time.
Yeah. So previously on, it's more about Mesmero, more of Rogue and taking the powers and stuff like that, and then them all getting trapped into the chamber. So doing what he does best, Pyro lights up the room to kick it off. Also, this show does a great job of undoing a thing that happened like in an episode or like 3 episodes prior, because they made a point of all the lights going out and then Pyro easily lights up the room again.
Yeah.
like them blowing out the candles did nothing essentially.
Yeah, I see he did that, and I was like, oh, okay, so we're doing this. Is Kitty just going to walk through the tomb door that they got locked behind?
That would make sense. So the statues come alive. The Cyclops optic blast doesn't really do much to it. So that gave me the impression, at least at that point, that it was something that was like mythical because it was making statues come to life. We find out later in the episode they were actually robotic, which now is confusing to me why the Cyclops' blast does nothing, considering it could take out the Juggernaut.
And Sinister. Oh, I guess we haven't seen Sinister in this one yet.
No. We have a moment where Colossus saves Kitty, but then the floor collapses, and when that collapse happens, the Nightcrawler gets sucked down in there with them. So when that happened, I actually shot Rod a moment. I'm like, I'm kind of loving the Kitty Colossus references right now.
Oh, this is the part you were talking about.
Yeah, because
I can see that.
Well, and also, aside from what you've heard us talk about on this show, how familiar were you with the Colossus Kitty like relationship of it all that existed?
Nothing except for Pride of the X-Men.
Which was barely anything because she comes across as way younger than him at that point, too.
Yeah. Here, what I did kind of see a little parallel for, though, was this made sense to me because of Colossus's relationship with his little sister, the Magic. So I was like, oh, this makes sense. It's not completely out of nowhere, at least for me.
He's not, and we've had it established, like, he's stuck working for Magneto, He's still doing it, but he's doing it because he has to, as opposed to like being brainwashed or something like that.
Yeah. And that floor drop, this is the point that I referenced last episode where I was like, this whole thing, especially this second part, feels like a video game. Because it's like you beat this level and then the floor drops and all the characters like drop to like another challenge, you know?
You know what it specifically reminds me of is the mid scene in Final Fantasy US3 International 6, because you have the party literally get split up into 3 different groups.
Ah, yeah.
Which is great if some of your party is underleveled. We get a moment where Magneto saves Charles, and then we see that Storm, Jean, and Bobby end up getting kicked over to their own like little group by the Crow God thingy, and that's where we jump into the intro. So again, a lot of shit happening before the intro kicks in here.
Yeah, I think I looked at the time this time. I was like, wow, after the intro, there's only 15 minutes left.
Yeah, I don't think it was that point, but there was a part where I was like, looking at the time code, I was like, there are 7 minutes left. How are we going to get through the rest of this? But from a pacing scenario, they actually did it. So,
yeah, I was still trying to reconcile. I looked at the time and I was like, there's 1:47 left, and I don't see how this goes into cruise control.
Right.
This is before I knew what I knew.
Yes.
Last episode.
So we get our pairings. You have Beast, Magneto, and Xavier together. They get stuck behind one door. In another room, you have Cyclops, Pietro, and Pyro, who are together. And then Pietro just proves how absolutely stupid he is, where it's, all right, if we move really slowly, we should be able to sneak out of here. I think Scott is assuming that these things are like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, where it's like they only see movement if you're like going really fast. So slow for Pietro is running off at like full speed.
Yeah, or he's just trying to.
Yeah,
he's just trying to like leave everybody behind.
Yeah, save his own ass, and he triggers the statues.
Isn't that the trope of like if you're camping and bears attack, you don't have to be faster than the bears. You just have to not be the slowest friend.
Yeah, you have to be faster than one other person. Pick the bear. So you have Storm and a passed out Jean and Bobby who are fighting. Bobby's able to like make the ice slide and freeze one of the statues. Before we keep going on it, I do want to point out in the previous episode, they specifically said he's going to have to bring his most experienced students. So maybe it was literally just from the events of the last Mesmero episode with the relic and the spider guardian thing. Mm-hmm. But Bobby is the only one of the New Mutants who was included in this group.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
And he's also, they've been kind of dropping hints that he's accelerated, right?
I mean, he was also the one who crashed the Blackbird in like, or the X-Jet in like 14 seconds, so.
Yeah, but that was, last season, right?
Yeah.
Was it this
so,
season? Yeah, so like they're showing like some character
he's getting
growth.
his shit together. Yeah. You see 2 Sphinx statues, and they start to come to life. And then, again, in hindsight, makes a lot of sense. At the time, Storm shooting Stone with lightning, I was like, Storm, you know that doesn't do anything, right?
It's just energy beams.
Yeah. And we get a moment where Colossus is looking to beat through a wall with his bare fists, or his metal fists, and then almost murders Kitty by punching in the face.
Yeah, super cute moment. That's what I thought you were talking about. I was like, oh, was he being sarcastic about this?
No. The moment that I texted you about, we haven't gotten to yet, but I just I love that they took the time to put this trio together specifically because, and I even had to look this up, I forgot at one point, Kitty as Shadowcat, Nightcrawler, and Colossus were all parts of Excalibur at the same time.
Oh.
And I always forget that Colossus was a part of Excalibur. I always think of Shadowcat and Nightcrawler, especially with like the Marvel trading cards era, because you would always see like those two with Captain Britain and Megan and stuff like that. I, for some reason, and Phoenix as well, but I always forget that Colossus in the 90s, like 95 or so, became a part of Excalibur. So, Xavier does a telepathic call out to let everybody know what's going on. Beast starts reading the hieroglyphics, and if you had only watched part 1 and listened to me talk about it in the previous episode, you probably were wondering, what the fuck is John talking about? That didn't happen in this episode, which is accurate. It's in this episode where we get the whole Rama-Tut, Kang, bringing technology from the stars, and we get the flashback to Apocalypse being the mutant baby found in the desert.
That's right. Okay.
So I jumped ahead.
That's fine.
And that's where, it's acknowledged that he was named in Saba-Nur, which is the first one, which I believe I corrected in a previous episode as being inaccurate to what that translation means. But he was basically under the protection and training of Baal, and Tut basically orders their destruction. I believe the difference in the comic versus this version of it is he is the only survivor. But it the whole group of people that found him, the Ascani, not the Ascani, Ascani's Cable. I didn't write the name down. But there was something where Tut had basically ordered this tribe to be attacked, and that was why Baal raised him to be a force against Kang, essentially. So
kind of like the Egyptian version of Guardians of the Galaxy. The MCU version of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep, that works.
With Chris Pratt's character.
I like though, they go to say, well, he was the only survivor, so he chose the name Apocalypse, which makes no sense because English is the language the word apocalypse comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just everybody speaking English.
Yeah, but it's they had in Saba-Nur, which was, his, based off of the language at the time, but it's but he chose an English word before English existed.
There's an unnamed movie that I was in a focus group for recently, and they were like, do you have any criticisms of the story and stuff? And I was like, listen, I know it's not going to be this serious, but we just traveled to several different countries and worlds and everything. It was a big deal, the story. Everyone spoke English, and everyone's names are clever,
English puns,
English words.
Yeah.
So I don't want you to change it because of that, but if you're asking for story beats, then I don't think this is the movie to do it.
Fair. We cut over. Scott is still using his blast, and it finally blasts through one of the arms, and that's where we figure out that it is an electronic scenario. And I'm like, oh, now I don't feel like Storm was doing the bad thing. She might not have known why it was the good thing, but she was at least doing the right thing.
So was this supposed to be more evidence that Rama-Tut was an alien?
Time traveler.
Okay, it was a time traveler. Okay.
Because there is a comment later on that is essentially, it was made here on Earth in the future, and then that's a throwaway line. So
okay, that's why is either time traveler or alien. So because they earlier they said Beast said seem to fall out of the stars. Seem to what? Why would you clarify that?
Yeah. Quicksilver is able to trip one. It busts through a wall where we get the reveal for Bobby, Jean, and Storm. Storm continues zapping the Sphinxes down. There's a moment where Jean is able to wake up, and she does the telekinetics save, and then you get the Scott Jean hug moment.
Mm-hmm.
So they still not had the conversation.
They should have had it right there because they were going to have it in a concert. So why not do Why You're Going to Die?
No. Then we find out more of what happened with Apocalypse, where he basically took down the Pharaoh. Rama-Tut is never seen again. And then using the Eye of Ages, which I actually didn't look up to see if that was a thing from the comics. But Xavier is able to interpret that he wanted to basically turn humans into mutants. And he uses the eye, ends up draining his own life force. And then his council sees this as an opportunity to turn on him. And they seal him inside of this own, not coffin thing, but essentially a coffin thing.
Yeah. So when you asked before in the last episode of how familiar that I was with this Apocalypse origin story, I don't think I knew any of this part. Mm-hmm. This was really interesting for me to see because usually we just see Apocalypse, or I usually see Apocalypse emerge from he was just always there.
Right. So this part I did not look up around him being sealed off, if that is still accurate. So that might be accurate, or it might be a part of evolution. I wish we had John Reisinger here, because he would probably be able to give us like 7 references to where it's accurate, where they countered it, and then when they they redid it to make it fit the retcon continuity.
Yeah.
So,
or even just this idea that he was like had his life force drained, and then was kind of like encapsulated in time, and then like his origin really was when these kids woke him up.
Yeah, because that is very different than what we're used to, where he's been there throughout time and he goes into his hibernations when he gets defeated. This is he only did one thing, which was obviously big, overthrowing the Pharaoh of Egypt, but then has been gone for 5,000 years.
Yeah, and didn't have a Lazarus chamber.
No. And then they mentioned that he's been locked behind 3 doors, but he's not in that tomb that we're walking towards right now, which is great.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, that's why the Beast story was happening.
Yep.
With Gambit and Sabretooth and Wolverine.
Yep. So the plane lands in the mountains, very close to another plane in the mountains of Tibet, which props to them for landing those planes, because that seems like a great way to crash and die.
Oh, yeah.
Landing on the side of a mountain, yeah.
In Tibet, yeah.
Yeah. Wolverine knows there are 3 scents to track. One needs to be Mystique, because he can't really smell it. And then annoyed Gambit is like, or we could just follow the fucking 3 sets of tracks and walk up. So,
okay, here, you try hard.
Yep. This is actually the moment I texted you where Kitty and Kurt are in a ruined chamber. Kurt does not trust Colossus, and you can tell Kitty's kind of like crushing on him, and he busts through a wall, and then there's like that awkward moment where he's like, I was concerned.
Oh, that was cute. Yeah.
And then there's kind of like the little nod to Kurt, and I was like, yeah, that's the Peter I like.
Yeah.
And then we get everybody is together, and then there's more of the giant stone gods fighting each other.
Mm-hmm.
You get Xavier, Magneto, and Beast, who are at one of the doors, and they're like, what's behind that door? Magneto, with like the perfect stinger line, is like, answers. It's so corny, but it actually worked, even though like I think it worked because it was corny, honestly.
Yeah. It's like Peter Griffin saying Roadhouse. Like Roadhouse.
I don't think I've seen that.
He always like whenever someone gets kicked in Family Guy for a little while, he'd just be like, Roadhouse.
I might have stopped watching at that point.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I actually can't remember last time I watched it.
So they see this like big, diamond tech piece in the middle of the room that starts glowing as they approach. And then it starts to open as they get closer. Xavier just goes in and picks up a helmet and instantly knows it's a Cerebro interface. And I wrote in my notes, for fuck's sake.
This is one of my video game logic here, because they enter a room, there's a giant diamond thing floating in the middle of the air, and it just unlocks for them because they unlocked the room. Mm-hmm. And then there's an interface that should not be there historically.
So I think if I have to logic it out as to why, which will probably never get clarified for us, so we have to take the logical leap of it. I think because it is supposedly built in the future, as Beast mentions, that it's actually an evolved version of Xavier's own Cerebro.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
But I was just like, dude just picked up something that's in this alien craft and is like, I'm going to put this on my head. It's like, That's how you get aliens. That's how xenomorphs start.
But that was very video gaming to me. It's like, oh, in every distant location, there's the same thing that you need to interface with, same save points and stuff.
Yeah. That's literally all of the Assassin's Creed series.
Yeah.
So they have the best cell service in the history of existence, because in this room, Beast has a signal on his headset and is able to get a phone call from Logan, who's on the side of a mountain in Tibet.
Yeah. Yeah, them satellite phones, right?
Dude, that in like a snowstorm, like, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah. While they were like how many feet underneath the ground.
Yeah. But apparently they're at a spot called Makala Peak, which I didn't know that one, so didn't look it up because I've stopped doing that for this show. It gets interrupted because Mesmero does an attack on Gambit, Wolverine, and Sabretooth. And they're able to hold it off because they drop that little with the smoking gun in the previous episode of like, we need to give them some sort of mental defense, otherwise like they're going to be taken over. Gambit is still pissed. Sabretooth is like, he's lucky because he told me to push you off the side of the mountain, and I'm still kind of thinking I should do it.
Yeah.
Which I like this writing for Sabretooth. Like,
yeah,
he's got more entertainment value than 92, where 92 is like, aside from the Great and Creed episode, just a very feral version of Sabretooth, you know?
Yeah. And then Gambit's like, I want both of you to jump off the mountain.
Yeah, I would literally be okay with both of you, like, killing each other right now. So, we get what you love to bring up, the, like, pseudo fastball special, where you get Kitty, Colossus, and Jean, who, like, they do a triple team maneuver as a way of taking out one of the statue gods, where Colossus basically embeds himself through its chest.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Nope. You have Rogue, Mystique, and Mesmero in the temple. Mystique is very pissed off to find out that she is the final key.
And I like that she was like willing to sell out her daughter, and she did say like both of us would be unharmed, but she was like, you were supposed to possess, why didn't you possess me like you possessed her? And it's like, but you were cool with the dude possessing your daughter. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of great contradictions from Mystique of like, she's like obviously out to save her own ass, but she'll protect Rogue. Also, Destiny is just like off wherever. in the South, not worrying about anything right now. And also, like, you know, in that last episode with Destiny, she's like, yeah, your futures look uncertain. Where ironically, here it's like, well, your future is assured. That was what Mystique was promised. So,
oh yeah, I forgot that connection.
Yeah, but Mesmero, you know, like you were saying, well, I couldn't enslave you if I wanted to, but I also need you to go be a snake and go through this wall.
Did he even say snake though? I love how he pointed at a hole and he just like was like, oh, well, you're mostly the key because you're the only one that.
Yeah, I also interpreted a little bit of it aside from the snake aspect was there's something with your hand that like your hand is what the shape shifting is what can activate the stone thing. And when that happens, she turns into a giant chunk of stone.
I love that Evolution's season finale tropes have become Mystique probably dies, but maybe not.
But maybe not, yeah. And because Rogue is still under Mesmero's control, she literally walks by her stone-encased mom and is just, like, totally cool with it. At that point, Gambit blasts the door. One thing that we had pointed out in a previous episode with Gambit was the way his powers were shown. It was blue. They actually made it closer to the color scheme that we're used to in this episode. Yeah.
It was really cool to see him, like, use it kind of in a creative way that made sense.
Mesmero, shockingly, is basically able to hold all three of them at bay at the same time together, too, for at least a decent amount of time. So, yep. Rogue moves to the center, the pod opens up, and Skinny Apocalypse, like, wakes up and opens an eye and sees Rogue.
And then just... he like knows what to do. I guess the implication was he's been like conscious this whole time, right? That's why he got Mesmero to do everything and stuff.
Yeah, he's had some level of strength that he's been using to communicate.
And he goes like Shang Tsung on Rogue.
Yeah. Real quick, we are back in Egypt, and that's where we get the reveal that the vessel was built on Earth in the future and is capable of instant travel. That's a quick like insert that happens right there. And then you get more fighting. As the fighting is happening, they are able to actually knock out Mesmero. And when that happens, Rogue snaps out of it. just in time for Apocalypse to grab her arm, and that's when, your point, Shang Tsunging her and just like pulling powers of people right out of her, and he's like getting bigger, and like he's not getting like what we're used to of just like oversized Apocalypse, but he gets pretty jacked pretty instantly.
Yeah. This was an intriguing version of Apocalypse. I don't know if this type of powered Apocalypse is in the comics. I'm guessing there's some sort of version of this.
I'm not sure what exactly this version's power is, honestly.
But it's kind of a cool idea that it's not just some random Lazarus chamber in the middle of Egypt that has some mystical power that's powering him. Like he's like a vampire kind of, right? He's like siphoning from other mutants.
Yeah. I've not read anything where it was this version of Apocalypse. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, obviously, but I've not, at least in main 616 continuity, seen that. And I've been buying pretty regularly since 2005, so yeah. It also reminds me a little bit of X-Men Apocalypse, the movie, and the less we talk about that, the better.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So Wolverine walks in, sees it, Rogue is down, and then Apocalypse just starts levitating. Which, again, very different than the vibe of 92/incoming 97 Apocalypse.
Yeah, he's not brute strength. He's like an apparition.
Yeah. In Egypt, Scott is the last one to get on the ship. It teleports to Tibet. The poor robot doesn't get the swing out in time to try to smash the entire ship. Then it's all done in slow-mo. And at first I didn't know if it was like Apocalypse slowing him down. I think this was done in slow motion to show how fast Apocalypse's senses are, because Wolverine lunges at him and then he's just able to instantly be stopped by Apocalypse, like on a whim, essentially.
Yeah, was that the clap?
No, that was not the clap.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Right after that, though, he goes into the main room. Everybody has gotten off the ship, and that's where he claps the entire room and moves into the escape pod.
It was like a Hulk clap, right?
Very much so. Yeah.
That was the point where I looked at the time and I was like, "There's only a minute and a half left."
Yeah, totally.
Do they all die and then get on a cruise ship?
So there's like one last minute chance where it looks like Magneto could be the one who stops him and saves him, which we know Magneto is the one who helped bring him forth by stopping the Guardian, and he's just not able to do it in time. And it's like, oh, shit, we all just failed, and this is going to be the biggest battle of our lives, essentially.
And I also kind of took it as this whole thing was part of the prophecy or the destiny of it, you know? Like, it's a part of the team going to the vessel, bringing it to Apocalypse, you know? Like,
yeah, there was
just,
some...
roll down in front of him.
It's almost like when, in the Guardian episode, that when Mesmero let Charles see a part of his memories, it was purposefully sending him to Egypt as opposed to Tibet, because that's the breadcrumb that makes him go to the wrong spot, and then gives him not just all these powers from Rogue, but the ability to teleport wherever he wants to go.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
So in what should have been the season finale, I think that's an awesome end to a season.
Yeah, that was a great season finale.
Yeah.
And now I'm like upset that the cruise ship thing is after this. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I know it doesn't matter because we're streaming and we watch this whatever, but like, I can't wait to find out what happens in the next season.
In 2 episodes,
yeah, how they pick it up. Yeah. Don't get your hopes up for next week.
Yeah, the less we say about next week until we get into the actual review, the better. But yeah, man, I really like this version of Apocalypse. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because, like I said, it's a little bit reminiscent of like what they were trying to go for with the Oscar Isaac version of Apocalypse. But this is what happens if you do it well.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot that
Moon Knight was Apocalypse.
Yeah, what a weird... Because I was just going to say, like, what I liked about Evolution's Apocalypse is I feel like Moon Knight could appear at any time. Like, he wouldn't be out of place in this story.
Right.
And then that's funny that yeah, he was the Fox Apocalypse in the MCU Moon Knight. What a weird. Okay. Yeah, no, I like this too. I can't wait to see what happens next. Like I mentioned before, I think this might have been one of my favorite episodes as a whole. Like not in the individual storylines. It was an exciting superhero adventure, and they didn't really mention anything about who's dating who or going to the prom or graduating or whatever. It's just they got to get out of this tomb, and Apocalypse is there.
And the romantic flirting had nothing to do with high school.
Yeah.
In fact, one of those people almost murdered the other one by punching him in the face without knowing. So
yeah, more superhero romance.
No, exactly. So thank you guys for joining us. And if you like what you heard, make sure to rate us on the podcast app of your choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts. Put us number 1 on CastBox. If you have any thoughts, make sure you drop them into the comments for either the YouTube upload, the official Instagram post, or the Spotify comments section. I did those out of order, but I think I covered it pretty well. Number 1 on CastBox.
Number 1 on CastBox.